What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a little sit down chitty chat video because when I asked on my Instagram what you guys wanted to see on my channel, so many people were interested in the style of training, kind of like hybrid, a little bit of CrossFit, a little bit of bodybuilding, and how I've basically transitioned from full-time CrossFit, then that period of time when I was doing full-time bodybuilding, and now kind of back into CrossFit a little bit more. And if you're following on Instagram, you probably have already seen some videos and posts I've made of like my week of workouts and things like that. So if you're not following, go follow me on Instagram because I do share a lot of my training on a day-to-day basis. For the purpose of today's video, I want to talk a little bit about both building muscle and maintaining muscle while you are focusing on a more endurance-based sport such as CrossFit. I think there's a really big misconception, and this is something that I've actually talked about in the past as well, and I still really believe in, that a lot of CrossFit training and a lot of CrossFit style workouts, programmings, gyms, a lot of them are not based on a progressive overload structure. And basically when it comes down to it, when you are building muscle, maintaining muscle, a huge component of this is progressive overload. So if you didn't see that video on like adding in isometric bodybuilding style things to CrossFit, kind of gives a little bit of an eye-opener on like how the CrossFit workouts are structured. And then I also did a muscle building myths video back in the day, which is actually the most watched video on my channel. So I'll link all of that in the description box. But for today's video, we're just gonna kind of talk about how I'm implementing all of the above, because I know you guys were really curious about that, and just give you some tips and tricks on how to not only build muscle, but maintain your muscle throughout your journey. Let's talk about a lot of the key components in building muscle, right? You obviously have to make sure you're eating enough protein. This is like the base foundation. You have to be able to eat enough. If you are not eating enough food, whether that's maintenance or in a surplus, you are not going to be able to build muscle tissue. But how that works and when your muscles are being essentially tearing and breaking down in the gym, right? And to build it back up, you need to be focusing on progressive overload. Let's say that you are starting in the gym and you're doing like leg extensions, you're doing like 4 sets of 10 or whatever. A good range, a good rep range is anywhere from like 8 to 12 reps for hypertrophy. So if you're focusing on your legs that day and you get to the 10th rep, you can't do any more at say 50 pounds. You're gonna stay there, you're going to failure essentially, which I'll get to in a second because it's important to train to failure sometimes with building muscle. When you can do the 10 reps at let's say 50 pounds, the following week you're going to want to increase that by 5 pounds. So that next week you're going to try the set of 10 at 55 pounds. And it's important to keep track of this as well, because I think one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, especially in CrossFit and when they're like going into it wanting to have these like major body composition changes, is that they're not focusing on where they started, they're not keeping track of it, but they're also not following a program that is specifically designed for progressive overload with those certain muscle groups in mind, right? Like people, you know, they want bigger quads and they want bigger glutes, they want bigger shoulders or biceps or whatever it is. And if you're not dedicating at least like 4 to 5 working sets, multiple exercises, like let's just say 2 to 3 would even be a great place to start, per each muscle group twice a week, it's gonna be really challenging to grow that muscle tissue. So how do these CrossFit athletes do it, right? I talked about this in the video where I called Kelsey Keel, and we chatted about what her training looks like, what her nutrition looks like. And for the average person, that's obviously not realistic. And a lot of us are not trying to go to the CrossFit games, right? A lot of people join CrossFit because they want to grow their legs or their butt. They want to change their body composition. But unfortunately, you know, because they're doing it without progressive overload in mind, maybe their nutrition isn't on point, it's really challenging to do that. They get frustrated and then they're looking for like alternative routes to do that. In my personal opinion, I think the best thing that you can do if you are someone who has an endurance-based sport is to break your year up into phases. Now, how many phases is really up to you and what you feel more comfortable doing. Maybe that's around a competition or just a time of the year. A lot of people like to bulk in the winter time because you're wearing like sweatshirts and sweatpants and you don't feel as, you know, uncomfortable in a bikini, which I totally understand. For me, I'm gonna give you, you know, my kind of year plan, and unfortunately, I'm basing this around Wodapalooza, which I know, I don't want to hear it. I literally don't want to hear it. I got asked to do a team again. I think I may have already said this, so this might not be surprising if you are like a loyal subscriber, but I kind of started this around Wadapalooza when I began, because as someone who is on the smaller side, I just know that when it comes to being stronger, ultimately I can only do so much at my stature with what I weighed back then. And so I knew that I needed to put on significant size in order to get stronger. Bigger muscles, having more mass moves more mass. My competition for me is in January. And once I finished that, I knew that I wanted to go directly into a building phase. And I kind of took a little break from CrossFit. And this is when, you know, I heavily focused on my app workouts. I have a full app with all of my bodybuilding, hypertrophy workouts on there as well as a dumbbell program, CrossFit program. There's like almost 300 workouts on there. So I spent a large amount of time focusing on strength workouts that were not only dumbbell. So when it came to the end of the year, I knew that I was not going to compete in Wadapalooza like this upcoming January that just passed. So I decided that in January, I was going to, or in December, excuse me, I was going to focus 6 to 7 months on growing and pull back from CrossFit. This is really, really important, especially if you're a beginner, even if you want to compete in CrossFit or you want to ultimately change your body composition down the line. Taking a significant amount of time, and if 6 months is too much for you, even 3 to 4 would be great, and focusing it solely on building muscle, because you can cut and cut and cut all you want, but if you don't have that muscle mass underneath, you're not going to get the body composition changes that you want. I started in December, and I decided I was going to spend 6 to 7 months in a growing phase, eating above maintenance, focusing solely on bodybuilding isolation and implementing the progressive overload. I just really made sure that each week I was trying to get a little bit more, whether that was volume or weight, for the majority of the exercises. People will ask, well, how do you know how often to do that? And it's really important that you listen to your body. You shouldn't be going to failure on every single exercise, but at least having the majority of them have like one set of to failure is also really important to fatigue your muscles when you're in a growing phase. After I approached the 6 or 7 month mark, I knew that I wanted to cut down a little bit, but the key factor in this was not doing it too quickly. And this is where so many people go wrong. They spend a good time in a caloric surplus, they've built some solid muscle, but because they're getting a little uncomfortable, they want to lose the weight, they go into a very severe deficit too quickly, and the rate at which you lose weight also increases your rate of losing muscle mass. So you really want to be careful with this. And if you can, I would definitely suggest going back down to maintenance instead of just going from a super high surplus to a really large deficit. And work your way incrementally back down to a maintenance level and stay there. That's going to preserve the muscle mass that you built for as long as possible. As I'm doing this, I'm also starting to add in some more CrossFit workouts. And this is kind of where I knew I could use that to my advantage, because obviously doing those type of higher cardio workouts are going to increase my energy expenditure, which creates that deficit. So of course, you know, you want to be able to eat as much as possible when you're in a deficit. So for me, adding in CrossFit, I started with 3 times a week, making sure that I was adjusting my food as needed, and then starting to add it back in more regularly to where I was now flipping my priority to CrossFit with having bodybuilding as the accessory. When it comes to doing that, I think a lot of people often overdo this because they don't realize how taxing CrossFit, both in the sense of Olympic weightlifting and Metcons, gymnastics, endurance, is on your body. So you have to be really, really careful and articulate when it comes to adding in these accessories to supplement your CrossFit style workouts and not hinder your progress. I'm going to break that down for you and what that looks like for me, because now I am going into like the fall season, which is where qualifiers are going to start for Wadapalooza, I think in September. I've had July, August, and September to kind of work on building up that cardio base again, getting myself used to like being upside down and things that I took a pretty significant time off from. And then I will start doing the qualifiers in, I think it's September or October, and my bodybuilding isolation will take a little bit of a break from that, but it will only be for a couple of weeks. The way that my CrossFit programming is broken up, and this is kind of the way that I like to program as well. If you've done any of my programs on my app, you probably already know this, but I start off the week with the things that I want to improve on the most. So for me, that was my lower body, and I chose to split my lower body sessions, or things that I really wanted to grow, in 2 sessions when it comes to CrossFit. On Mondays, I have my primary lift, and this is the thing that you're going to want to really emphasize as your main goal if you're trying to build strength and muscle. So you want to do that first. So for me, that's either back squat, front squat, one of those two squatting movements, and because I'm doing CrossFit, most likely a snatch. While that does also involve some pulling, it's more lower body dominant than it is upper body dominant, especially because my Metcons or any type of workout that I'm doing after that on that day is usually leg focused. So think like dumbbell walking lunges or box jumps, rowing, biking, something like that, that you're using more lower body than upper body. The first day of the week is designated to that, and after I'm done with my CrossFit, I take a break, make sure that I'm eating, recovering, and later on in the day, I then choose to do my accessory. I'm doing 5 to 6 exercises total. It takes around an hour, and I'm doing these accessory movements that you don't see in CrossFit. So things like leg extension machine, leg press machine, dumbbell split squats, the abductor or adductor, glute kickbacks, things that are really going to isolate. I also do a lot of single leg work because I do have a really large imbalance on my hips, so do with that what you will, but I love a lot of single leg or lateral work, and that is pretty much where I focus my progressive overload on, just on a smaller scale. Whereas before, when I was in my growing phase, my leg workout also included a compound movement like front squat, back squat, hack squat, things like that, and I had maybe 4 sets of things, whereas now I'm doing 3 because I've already had that morning session of leg work. Then going into Tuesday, I have what I like to call my pull day, and this is also a little bit of back focus because Tuesdays are primarily surrounding gymnastics work, and I like this because Monday is a really like strength-based, heavy lifting kind of day, and then Tuesday starts out a lot of body weights, things like muscle ups, pull-ups, ring dips, things like that that are incorporating a little bit of upper body strength, but a lot of pulling. The accessory to that is the weightlifting or compound movement of power cleans, hang power cleans, anything like that, where I'm basically doing a lot of pulling, utilizing my lats and upper back. I told you guys this in my full day of eating. My 2-a-days are only on Mondays and Wednesdays right now because that's just what works best for me. But Wednesday is then what I like to call my push day. So Wednesday is going back to kind of the structure of how Monday is, with a really big emphasis on split jerks, push jerks, strict press, anything overhead utilizing the shoulders. Workout that's going to be accompanying that is also going to be shoulder focus. So think things like handstand push-ups or double unders, handstand walks, push jerks, dumbbell snatches, push press, ski. Anything that is requiring a pushing movement from shoulder to overhead is a lot of what surrounds my my Wednesdays. And then the second half of my day, again, after I've rested, recovered, eaten, I do my endurance piece of the week. And right now, because I am still trying to maintain as much mass as possible, I'm only doing a long endurance session 1 time a week. For me, genetically, my legs are just not naturally big. And so when I do a lot of running, a lot of biking, they get lean, and right now I'm just not wanting that. So Wednesday is really the only time that I have a longer endurance session, and it's no more than 35 or 45 minutes, either treadmill or running outside, doing intervals, or like today, for example, when I'm filming this, I am going to run 3 1-mile intervals, but they're not at like sprints, they're just paces where I have to be able to maintain them each round. So endurance and pushing on Wednesdays, and then I take a full rest on Thursday. I've just kind of always done this. Even when I was doing CrossFit, I like to have a rest in the middle of my week. Now, day 5, or my Friday, is kind of a melting pot of things. So I'm not doing a 2-a-days on Friday because my morning session is usually starting off with clean and jerk. Over the last like 7 weeks I've been doing this, I think. Yes, 6 or 7 weeks. Every Friday has been some type of heavy clean and jerk or clean complex with a jerk. So you're getting a little bit of pulling, a little bit of pushing, but leg dominant as well. And then the workout that's accompanying that are actually shorter intervals, whether that's like sprint intervals on the bike or something with rope climbs combined with a bike. It's kind of like a little bit of everything. Saturday, I normally will start out doing the CrossFit class at Iron District, just because it's usually like 20 or 30 minutes and it's with a partner, so it's really not a lot of work, and it allows me to get really warmed up for what I'm going to do after that, which sometimes is either power snatching or any type of Olympic weightlifting that I didn't just do the day before. Sometimes those will be switched. What I actually like to supplement that with is posterior accessory work. So after I have done my workout of the day and done whether that's power snatching, last week I had some ring muscle up drills as well, then I went ahead and focused on hamstrings and glutes and paired that with, again, starting with a compound movement, so like barbell hip thrusts, and I did some like banded hamstring curls. There's a lot of things that you can do at a CrossFit gym if you don't have access to a bodybuilding gym. I posted this reel on Instagram. If you don't have a hack squat machine or a belt squat machine, you can kind of stand on two boxes and drop a kettlebell in between. Mimics like the same glute focused squatting. So I do a lot of that and focus a lot on hamstrings and glutes on Saturday. And then of course my rest day is Sunday. So as of right now, I have roughly 3, sometimes 4 if I really want to do something extra on Friday, but 3 solid bodybuilding hypertrophy sessions that are either separated or tacked on to the CrossFit. And the Olympic weightlifting is again 3 or 4 sessions depending on what's on the schedule for that day, and then followed by the Metcons, which are like one longer one, so maybe like a 15-minute AMRAP or a 20-minute AMRAP, and then my endurance piece obviously on Wednesday, like I said, is longer, 35 to 45, and then Fridays is usually short sprint intervals. A little bit of everything. It's spread out throughout the week, and that is what I am currently doing right now while actually eating at maintenance. So even though I am losing a little bit because of the increase in cardio, which just increase in caloric expenditure, I am still eating a really significant amount, and it's allowing me to maintain my muscle mass and just make sure that I'm not losing any size that I've put on. And if you are trying to do that, it's really important that you're focusing on rest and recovery as well. You want to make sure you're eating enough protein, sleeping enough, and separating your workouts if you can, because you don't want to be overloading your body while you're trying to keep that muscle mass. It's just, you're going to lose the muscle mass faster if you're losing weight at a rapid rate. Hope that that was helpful in some way or gives you a little bit of insight into my current training. So let me know if you have any questions. I can always do like a more in-depth video on hypertrophy training and like maybe where to start, or just some questions that you guys have. Of course, leave them in the comments below. But that is it for today's video. Thank you so much as always for watching. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video.